Hello everybody! Today I'm going to be starting a new mini second channel series. This will be pretty simple here, so to go over the basics of this for all of these videos, I figured now that the meta is a bit more established, I would go over and talk about the main versions of the comps that exist right now. Maybe I'll cover a few of the alternative styles outside of the main three that I talked about in the main channel video, but check out that if you haven't already. This is basically just going to be covering it, and this is not a tier list, and this is not every weapon in the comp. You could see a midline comp with like 52 as a short range weapon, for instance, or you could see like roller instead. But I'm covering the basics. I'm not going to get anything that strays too far from the normal way the comp is played. So that's why the list looks like this, and I figured it'd be a good basic overview of the whole thing. So let's start with the paint weapon. This has a decent variety of stuff you can play, and it's pretty obvious for the short range weapon why you pick each of these. Like, this is your paint and strike option, this is your Zuka option, this is strikes but you want to be able to fight a bit more than the Neo Splash, this is your double cooler, this is your burst and crab, this is your bubble and a little bit extra bomb. You know, for the most part fairly self-explanatory. As for the role of this weapon in general, this is the least fight-heavy weapon of the comp. You should really only be fighting when you have a good opportunity for it. Maybe your team is already well set up and you have a shark. Maybe you have someone who is looking at a midline weapon. Maybe one of the midlines of the other team has overstepped and has entered short-range territory where you can fight them easily. Maybe you have a lot of specials. I don't know. Whatever the situation, there will be times like that where you could fight, but it should generally be low-risk, high-reward opportunities because you are mostly responsible for keeping the map your team's color to help keep pacing up. The anger weapon, on the other hand, can usually cover paint a bit when times are bad, and can help a bit more with the distance pains. But generally, these weapons are here for long-distance pressure and cooler output. So if Pencil already used its cooler, and it's not going to be able to farm another one for 10 seconds anyway, it shouldn't be paint botting trying to get another right away. It should be utilizing that for pressure as much as possible, especially since the paint on the weapon was nerfed recently, and so you have to be a little bit more fight-heavy than usual. Edit is a little bit more risky of an option. Generally, this is for the shorter range maps, but typically you will see a little bit of edit going in and playing its own angle, kind of like a longer range mini splatling. Usually that'll be when the short range weapon can give it a jump in or when there's ample opportunity to do so, but basically the same thing is kept intact here. You're looking for opportunities to put long range pressure and generally try to be as far forward as possible without being in too much risk. I see this mainly on holds where pencils will hang too far back. Whenever you can get added space and pressure, it's really valuable. So for example, if you could ever get set up as a pencil on Barnacle Snipe, you know, that block in the middle of the map, or like the middle of your side of the map. If you can ever get a pen up there on something like Barnacle Clams, it makes the lockout so much worse for the other team. So aggressive positioning for your anchors is very, very important, especially in a midline meta. This will be the second most fight heavy. Now, usually, these two tiers will actually be two different players, but in this case, not really, so I chose to separate it from the very rarely seen midlines from the very common ones. You can argue that these two are less common, but basically the idea is you are building around combinations of these specific weapons. Some are easier, some are harder. For example, Machine and Dually Squelcher don't have as much kill power by themselves, they're a bit slower at it, so maybe pair them with something that can get kills pretty quickly. If you have something like Range and Squeeze It, for instance, you might be stacking too hard on a few weaknesses. In this case, just being paint output is abysmally terrible. So think about your combinations and how you want to do them. However, typically, most midline compositions are going to be one of all of these, plus this. Because Bucket really does it all, still. Like, it doesn't get you in as much, but it has a very flexible kit. It has decent bomb output for a midline, it has area of effect with its sloshes, it has 70 damage to combo off of, and it's pretty fast for a midline. So typically you're going to see Bucket plus almost any of these, but not always. So that's the main one to get out of the way. So I'm just going to cover the basic strengths and weaknesses of each other one, and you can figure out what combinations you want to try yourself. Squeezers. Same thing as before. Long distance pressure, and just very hard to take out. It's a little bit more often in fighting range now compared to pre-patch, so you have to be a little bit smarter with it. This one is generally better if you are playing for sharking weapons or trying to get closer, while this one is better for maintaining distance. Just really depends on what you want. Splatana Stamper is playing for speed, most often paired with Bucket, but you're trying to move around the quick When you're trying to move around the map quickly, you paint under yourself just fine, so you don't really have to worry about it too much, and you basically just run around the map trying to get kills or damage that other people can play off of. Stamper prefers higher space comps, which means it fits better into another style I'll get to later, but for now it can totally work fine with stuff like this. Range Blaster. This is your other AoE option. This one plays much more into the AoE and kill power. You have weaker kits here with lower special output, so you're really speccing into the main gun and trying to play off of the damage here to force people into the open. Mint Decapitator. This one is much better at dealing with shorter range weapons, which means I think it will be a little bit more popular lately as more short range comps are more common. You can use it as a big punish weapon if people go in, or you can try to go forward when other midlines are taking attention for quick kills. The 40 and 80 damage on the weapon is also very good for combos, and the kit is very self-sufficient. You get quite a lot of it, and you can just basically use your bombs or bubble to play neutral if need be, or secure space. So this weapon could be fairly flexible for the role it's in. 96 Deco is also a bit more of a stall weapon in this case. Compared to Squeezer, it has a bit better paint, and you have Kraken instead. Not as good as Special, but you're going to get more of them. This means 96 is a very difficult weapon to take out, and it will be achieving a little bit more passively, making it really good for just controlling space on its own and being a very self-sufficient weapon, as well as one that can buy time for its team. Splatana Wiper is more often than not going to be some kind of counterpick option. It's mostly very good into other slower weapons like Range Blaster, for instance, or a lot of short-range shooters that it can comfortably outrange. The kit is especially good at focusing on some kind of distraction playstyle, and it can play kind of similar to a Tetra at times when it takes attention, so that's pretty noteworthy. On top of that, though, the hammer is pretty good at punishing some of the slower weapons or just having an option to deal with things up close, but this is still going to be very fast, very run it down, very self-sufficient. Dually Squelchers have a bit more flexible kits and paint output, but outside of that are somewhat similar to Wiper in that they're more for the mobility. In this case, this has by far the weakest kill power out of all the midlines here. The damage is very low. You need other people to work around that, but this can be very good at taking attention, and it has pretty unique kits. This is the main beacon option for mid-range options, which is pretty unique here. Like with Stamper, I think this fits better with a different comp, but you could also see it here. Sorella 10 is also kind of closer to its own thing. Might be worth its own video to go over just 10 style comps in general here. But if I were to label it, I'd say you could play it as one of your midlines. Kind of use it to allow your short-range shooter to be more aggressive, or for weapons like Stamper or Mint Decapitator in particular to get up close. It can function as a way to approach and give you a bit more shielding. It can also, of course, pair nicely with something like Squeezer and 96 to have a wall to stack with the 10, especially since 10 Zuka can help a lot with entry, and I think that's really the main point of this weapon. I think having a midline with a shield that could also get a decent amount of a special to get you forward is pretty noteworthy. Machines have very limited kill power. You're basically just playing these for the weapon kits themselves, but still, you got two pretty good kits to work around. It also gives you a little bit of AoE. It's kind of a weird hybrid between what Bucket and Range are trying to do, but it does neither of them very well, so you really have to like the kits, which in this case is going to be some kind of location thing, or you really want a Fizzy Bomb for the most part. Kind of awkward in the middle. Rapid Deco's a big maybe, honestly. It might not even fit very well here because its solo killing power is quite low, but it does come with one of the better kits, though it can struggle very hard against other midline comps. In all honesty, I think if this is going to be picked, it's mostly when you're playing midline against non-midline weapons, because that's really where the weapon's better speed will be able to take advantage of shorter range weapons, similar for the jetpack, who will not be shot down as much if you're fighting stuff that's a bit shorter range. Finally is Crab Sword, here out of mostly obligation, because yeah, it's a sword with a crab, of course it's fine. You can just mostly use this for maps where you have a sword but want crab, or it's just a map that's a lot better for Crab Sword, like Crablet for instance, you might see it, but typically almost every sword player is going to play the normal one. For the most part, for whatever midline duo you're doing though, you're trying to take advantage of the weapon strengths. If you're playing around some of the faster ones, you want to play a little bit more mobile, area of effect, try to utilize that around corners, or if you're playing some of the laser guns that just kill you in the open, like Squeezer, you're playing for kills, 96 you're playing for stalling, whatever it might be. Take advantage of whatever duo strengths you have, but keep in mind that the comp is revolving like 70% around the midline guns, whatever they want to do. So you always have to be playing around that win objective. The good news is because these are all mid-range weapons, you don't always have to be running forward to make something happen. You can poke very easily at a distance and be safe while doing it, and still have the potential to find kills, while also being able to go forward when you have something like Tacticooler that can give quick super jump to allow you to go back more easily, or be punished a bit less if you die. How you play exactly depends on the combination you have, but there's a lot of interesting options that you could go for. These are the basics though for midline comps, and the weapons I think you most commonly see with them. Thanks for watching.